give them 2 minutes.
Did you hear that?
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Emmy.
No worries.
So efficient.
Hi, Butch.
Hi, Butch.
Who will introduce Butch?
I will.
Marily.
I will.
Okay.
So, Emmy, you want to start?
Yeah, I want to introduce Marily
1
first.
minute. 1 minute. Wala pang alas 4.
Teka. Tuloy Awa's been trying to come in. So, let's
1
bring him
minute
in
pa.
first. Sa awa ng Diyos. Loy,
Emmy.
is that okay, Butch? Can we give it mga 2-3 minutes? There are a few more
no problem.
contenders.
Sige lang.
Sige
Yeah.
lang.
Oh, there's
There's
until ready.
Bambi. Bambi's coming in.
Oh, there's
There he is.
Professor's
Yes,
Bambi.
Bambi.
Oh, praise the Lord. Dumadami na kayo.
Mm-mm.
Marily, what year are you in Maryland?
68.
Ah, okay. Laura Campbell.
Laura Cambiao. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
a president now.
She's
Yeah.
a good friend of mine.
Ah,
Oh.
she's such a nice person.
She was my slave.
Suma cum laude.
She was my slave.
Ah,
The
nice.
slave.
Hindi, kasi merong tradition nung araw sa
Tuloy.
Maryland. Pag graduation, the seniors, during the baccalaureate, have a slave. And that slave is a freshman who will do
Hindi kaya
anything.
yung akin.
Really?
Ewan ko, after a while, nawala na yung practice na yon.
Hindi mo na naabutan, Marily.
Hindi, naabutan ko yun.
Ah,
O,
naabutan mo.
naabutan niya kasi yung batch niya yun, freshman nung seniors kami.
Oh.
Teresa Whitney was my
It's
master.
Bambi.
Ah, Tere, I'm very close to Tere. We are in touch.
Very cruel master.
No, she's a very naughty girl. She
So
lives.
I was cruel to my slave. In memory of her.
I visited her in Madrid where she lives.
Yeah.
We're very close.
As cuatro.
O yan, 4 o'clock
Okay,
na.
game na tayo,
Okay.
game. Okay,
4:01.
Marily,
Pro one.
please
Let's go.
introduce. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our one and probably only workshop on writing. And we have the privilege and honor to have Mr. Butch Dalisay, who will be introduced further by Marily. So, Marily,
Okay.
without further ado. over-
Okay.
Mm.
Let me introduce Butch. Dr. Jose Y. Dalisay Jr. or Butch Dalisay, to the readers of his Panman column in the Philippine Star, has published over 40 books of fiction and nonfiction, and has won many prizes for his writing, including the TOYM, 10 Outstanding Young Men, the Palanca Hall of Fame, and the Gawad Balagtas, among others. He retired in 2019 as the Vice President for Public Affairs at the University of the Philippines, where he is now Professor Emeritus. My friend Butch was nominated this year for the National Artist Award for Literature.
Yay!
Manalo ka na sana. Butch, this is
Panalo na
the
yan.
AIM Class 71, the first batch of AIM.
Wow.
Okay, take it away. Ikaw na.
Well, thank you so much, Marily. Gandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I'm very glad to be here with you this afternoon to share a few ideas about writing and what I do as a creative writer and what you can do as also creatively putting something together. I hear that there's a book project in the works, and I'll do my best to help you make a significant contribution to that book. I think just to give you an overview of what I plan to do today, I'll give a short chat about writing in general, and then it'll get more specific about the kind of work that you'll be doing, and then I will take a short break while I give you a very short writing exercise.
Oh no.
That we can that we can just upload to the it'll be optional, but I hope you can all join in. It'll be fun.
Mhm.
that we can upload to the chat box, and then we will get back together and talk about what you've written, and also for me to be able to respond to questions you may have. I will also be uploading just a few samples to the chat box. I think we'll use that a lot today, so that you can see exactly what I mean by, let's say, a kind of a vivid description or effective narration and things like that. So I suppose, without further ado, I'll just launch into my spiel about writing, but particularly writing the personal essay, which is really what you guys are going to be doing. Now, of course, I'm fully aware of how accomplished this audience is. This is not my usual audience for a workshop like this, but bear with me for a couple of hours, because the best attitude I can take toward so that I can do this effectively with you is to simply assume, for example, that you are members of my graduate class. And in fact, I have had much more senior people than you in my classes, including some people you probably know. And they came out with very good books afterwards, particularly about their lives, which is also part of what we'll be doing. These people, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying so. These people include the likes of Linda Panlilio and Lourdes Montinola, and quite a few others, Margie Moran once. So we do a lot of this in UP now at the graduate level. Actually, we've opened up our graduate courses to people not necessarily who want to get graduate degrees, but who want to be able to write the story of their lives and other families, family histories, corporate histories. And they come in and join us not for the whole course, but for a few courses especially in what we call creative nonfiction, which I'm going to explain a bit more of today. And they find that sitting with other people in similar situations, meaning accomplished professionals, people have nothing more to prove in their professional lives, is very encouraging. Is very encouraging and allows them to tell the story that's been welling up in them all of these years, if not decades. Like Lourdes Montinola eventually produced her prize-winning book called Breaking the Silence, which was about her family, which was horrifically slaughtered by the Japanese in World War II during the rape of Manila. Very, very painful experience. Of course, it doesn't need to be a tragic experience at all that you will recall. Most people do happy stories about travel and cooking and companionship, and the best stories of their lives that just remain in their heads and are just waiting to be put, well, not to paper now, but onto a computer screen, and maybe even shared in a book. So that's what I'm going to try to do in a nutshell with you today. Kind of just get you thinking about possibilities in writing that might help you frame and create a better story about your experience as graduates of AIM. I must confess that I don't have that much of a relationship with AIM, although I of course know a lot of people who've been there. And well, chiefly, of course, the late Wash Sisip, whose biography I was privileged to write. And by the way, I just finished a long addendum to that biography that will be released by SGD and AIM on June 30th, his birth anniversary. And for that, I had a talk with Dr. Jikyong Kang, current AIM president, about a month ago. And so she briefed me on some of the things that are happening there now. And so to that extent, I kind of understand what's going on. But as far as the place as a school is concerned, its culture, the atmosphere, the competitiveness among students, that is something that I will depend on you to create for me. Let's talk about writing in general, particularly creative writing. Now, when we think of creative writing, of course, aside from poetry and drama, when we talk about creative prose, we really think of, or we really are talking about one or two things. First of all is fiction, or the short story and the novel, or what we today call creative nonfiction. In the old days, we kind of just thought about it as the essay, but then there are many kinds of essays. Creative nonfiction is a much broader term that includes, travelogues, writing about food, history, all kind of memoirs, of course, personal essays, which we will focus on today. When writers sit down and think about what they will be writing next in prose, they will face this choice. First question that they will ask is, should I write a story about it, or should I write an essay about it, about that experience? There are just a couple of things I'd like you to keep in mind as far as these choices are concerned. Why do people write fiction? We'll talk about that briefly because we'll not go there. We'll go into the essay. But why do people write fiction? There's a theory that fiction is really, of course, fiction is a big lie. It never happened. Even if it seems like it really happened, well, that's the mark of a good writer. He or she made it look like it happened, but it did not. It's a fabrication. So why fabricate? And the theory is that it's because the honest truth is often very difficult to face or to accept. Pag sabihin sa ating diretsahan, alam mo, ang sama mo eh. O may kahinaan ang karakter mo, mga ganyan, ganyang klaseng hurtful assessments. We don't want to hear that said to our faces. But when people kind of make believe that it's somebody else, then it's possible to imbibe or even accept these lessons. Because we read a book, we relate to the characters in that book, and we say, okay, I'm learning something here from somebody else's experience, but it doesn't hurt us because it's not us. Another way of putting it was that fiction was the shield of Perseus. If you recall your school mythology, Perseus was the guy who slew that woman with a bad hair day, Medusa, but he couldn't come up to her with his sword and just stab her because he was going to turn into stone. So what he did was to use a shield as a mirror and stab Medusa kind of obliquely. And that is fiction. That is literature that allows us to confront reality indirectly so that it doesn't kill us. But what fiction leads us to is the truth through a very fancy and creative lie. And that is fiction's work. Now, as I said, we're not going to go there. We are going into a kind of a reality mode. Okay, yung nangyari talaga. How do we write about what really happened? And here we go to creative nonfiction, which is another way of looking at creative nonfiction is that it is the recounting or retelling of factual events, but embellished by the techniques of fiction. And I'll go through those techniques with you a bit later on. Techniques like description, narration, exposition, dialogue, and so on. But first, let's stick with our decision to write a personal essay. A personal essay is really just a piece that recalls a significant memory, a significant experience that happened to you and your personal assessment of it. In other words, so this happened to you, what do you think about it? What did you think about it then? And what do you think about it now? And the then and now are very important factors here. One critic put it in terms of the remembered self, yung pinangyarihan, and the remembering self, yung gumugunita ngayon. And those two are not necessarily the same people. In fact, they're very often different. When you look back on the past, let's say 20, 30, 40 years ago, that self that you are remembering is no longer you today. Something has happened in between. And it's in that space that interesting things can arise in an essay. Because what you are really evaluating there is not just that experience, whether it was good or bad, but you're also evaluating yourself. Now, this is like a report on myself, looking back, and here is me now, looking at that person. The personal essay, I would say, belongs to a category of literature that we might call the memoir. Okay, that's another way of putting it. These are reminiscences of moments in a life, as opposed to an autobiography, which is a more comprehensive and more integrated view of that life. Actually, today, very few people write autobiographies because it's not an easy thing to do. Well, there are many demands when you write about yourself, whether memoir or personal essay or autobiography, but especially more so in autobiography, which is really meant to be a summing up of your life. There is an implicit demand for honesty and candor. And the question is, can you bring yourself up to that standard? Will you be able to tell, as they say, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? And my quick answer is no. Not because you don't want to, but because it's nearly impossible to remember everything precisely. Memory is treacherous and tricky. You will remember events that may not have happened the same way that other people remember them. And that's just natural. I mean, it's part of our humanity. we tend to defend ourselves, to make excuses for ourselves. And so that factor plays into memoir and autobiography, but especially in autobiography, which is like your definitive statement of what your life has been. I remember that a few weeks ago, I gave a lecture on Carlos P. Romulo, who I'm sure, of course, you're familiar with, and why he was made National Artist for Literature, which is something a lot of people don't know, but he was. And my theory was that he became National Artist because of his autobiographical work. Especially his autobiography, I Walked with Heroes. And when you read something like that, you not only look at a life, you not only look at moments in a life, but you look at a life in the context of national and international history. So the tableau, the backdrop is huge, is immense. And while I think no one can accuse the great CPR of modesty, I think even so, even if his personality and his ego kind of dominate that account, you can still see the vulnerability of the man. You can still see the real person emerge through and between the lines. You can see, for example, he says 3 times in that book, he says, "I am a small man from a small country." I mean, I disagree with the small country part. I've always thought that the Philippines is a big country pretending to be small, but that's another thing. But you can see Romulo positioning himself as this little guy from a little country, but making it in the world at large. And it's a statement that at once reveals his strength, but also his weakness. As a little guy, people tended to disregard him until he got to the podium and showed all of them that, I recall this instant when somebody said, how do you feel being among big guys like, Douglas MacArthur? And Romulo's response was, "Well, I feel like a dime among nickels." And that's brilliant. Now, that is autobiography, which is compounded of many, many, many moments, but strung along in a narrative that shows the trajectory of a life, of a person's life, and also of a nation and a world behind it. In the personal essay, we do not have that kind of stage to work on. We have a very, very little room, or a corner of a room, and we're standing there and telling us a little story about ourselves. But it has to be still a vivid and an interesting story that will leave a firm impression on our reader about what happened to us and who we are, and suggest who we became out of that experience. I was talking earlier about the remembered self and the remembering self, and there is this thing that essayists are mindful of, which is called emotional distance. In other words, how intimate or how remote do you feel in terms of that particular subject and time? Are you looking at it from a very, very long distance, or do you remember it like it happened? Remember and retell it like it happened yesterday. And that too is one of your choices. Some authors prefer to be remote. You know, some authors even write in the third person and cannot bring themselves to say, I, myself, me, because I suppose they think that it will reveal a certain softness or vulnerability. Some authors, on the other hand, can be kind of all over you. You know, it's full of me, and they do not have the kind of self-awareness that allows them to take a step back and look at themselves from a critical distance, to the extent that, let's say at age 70, they can look back on themselves at 30 and kind of chuckle and say, oh, wasn't that the most stupid thing to do? It takes, of course, maturity to be able to do that. But some people never really give up on the ego and carry it with them to their dying day. Now, that is a matter of self-negotiation. You have to ask yourself, how much am I willing to say? How much am I willing to kind of to yield? How much of myself will be in this picture? Or will I just be, which is also possible and totally valid, will I just be the kind of the fly on the wall, remembering what it was for everybody else? So you're barely in the picture, but you paint a very clear memory of everything else and everybody else. That is also possible. In fiction, we often talk about point of view. You remember this from your college literature, and basically the 3 points of view: first, second, and third. First being what we will be using for your essays, the I, you know, the me in the picture, the narrator. Second person is you, which is very rarely used because it's kind of manipulative. And third person is also very popular. This is the he, she, it. And you have several choices, the most popular of which, of course, is third person omniscient, where you have a narrator who knows everything and sees everything, the thoughts and feelings included. On the other hand, there's what we call the third person objective, which is almost scientific, reportorial, journalistic, which does not make any conclusions or evaluations, no commentary. It just lays out the action. It reports what happened as a good detective or policeman should on his or her police blotter. So point of view also kind of helps with this emotional distance thing. If you use a third person, of course, there will be a distance between you and the subject, but we are going to be using the first person, which is the most intimate point of view because it's you talking. Most intimate, but also in a sense limited because it's just you and your perspective. It doesn't show how others feel or think inside of themselves. We have to take your word for what they said and what you think they thought. So it really is just you talking. And that is again, for some people, not the most natural thing, maybe even a scary thing, especially if you've been very used to having other people talk about you, but not you about yourself, either out of restraint or modesty, or just, you know, you're just not the type to do that. Again, hopefully an essay like this will bring at least a little of you out without you necessarily being all over the place, but it's your eyes, your senses that will that will run this reportage. Okay. The first technique that, from fiction that I'd like to kind of share with you is that of narration and exposition. And really, this is providing the sequence of events that happened in that particular experience that you'll be recalling, providing the situation, the big picture, putting things in context, and then summing them up here and there, giving your feedback on what happened, perhaps even as it happened. In other words, introducing yourself as an authorial presence in this narrative. So narration has to do with a string of events, and exposition with kind of an explanation of these events. Exposition in particular really sounds like an essay. In other words, it's not something that you will often find in, let's say, good short stories where very little is explained. You know, I think you'll still recall reading short stories from school well, a long time ago, where you finished reading the story and ask yourself, anong nangyari dun? Storya na ba yun? I often, for example, use Hemingway's classic Hills Like White Elephants, which some of you might have read. A rather controversial story about abortion. The word abortion is never brought up there. And what happens there is that you have to really think about what in the world is Hemingway saying here? What is he dealing with? What are the characters? What are his characters talking about? And you have to read between the lines to figure out, okay, he wants her to lose the baby and she's resisting and so on. But Hemingway never does that. He doesn't explain things to you because he expects the intelligent reader to catch his drift. And that's your payoff. As the intelligent reader, you figured it out while the others didn't. In the essay, we allow ourselves to say things, to explain things, because we are there, because we are involved. We are characters in that narrative. You know what? When I teach fiction and nonfiction, one of the things that I often discuss with my students is that you think of the essay as like a newspaper editorial or a newspaper column. You open the Inquirer or the Star every day, and you will see big words like justice, freedom, equality, the environment, sustainability, and so on. You will never see these words in stories that have to do with freedom, justice, inequality, the environment, sustainability, and so on. They're just never there because they will be implied. No? The power of fiction is in its implication, and sometimes even it's in its ambiguity. You know, you can interpret a story this way or that way. In an editorial, in a well-wrought essay, there can be no question about what you mean or what you want your reader to understand. It is there, crystal clear. It may be even repeated 3 times, the beginning, the middle, and the end. You know, I used to write editorials with Daddy Boy Locsin when he was the publisher of Today newspaper. You might remember that late lamented newspaper from the early 90s. And I did that every day. Well, about 3 or 4 times a week that Teddy Boy would have me do the editorial. And it required you really to think in terms of these big issues and big words. But when I would return to my other role as a writer of fiction, I had to consciously keep them away so that I could write about this person, this situation, in this particular place, you know, eating taho or arroz caldo, you know, having a Marlboro afterwards. You had to be that specific, and a notion or a theme like justice and freedom will emanate from that piece of fiction. So what I'm saying is there are 2 very different modes, okay? Although again, creative nonfiction or the essay, especially the personal essay, can borrow things from fiction, like narration and exposition. You tell a story about what happened, and we will go to the next technique, which is setting and description. And here we're really talking about time and place. Kailan ba nangyari yan? Saan? How do you recall and revive enough of that place to recreate it in prose, so that other people can see it the way you did, so that you can share an experience from the distant past and make it feel to these people like it's happening to them now. Setting and description are a lot more than, again, merely giving time and place, although those 2 are important. Good description is evocative. It will create atmosphere. It will create an attitude or a frame of mind in the reader, whether he or she will be kind of disposed to be cheerful, or whether he or she should be filled with a sense of foreboding. You know, this sense that something terrible is going to happen because of your description of things. And this, of course, requires skillful observation and also an eye for detail. All right? Looking at, by detail, I mean looking at the little things that validate an experience and an environment. We don't simply say the big house. We don't simply say, for example, I often tell my students, describe a wet market for me. And of course, many of them can't, because iba ng kultura natin. Nobody goes to the fish market anymore. And when they do, it's a shock to them to think of how mabaho things are. Because now they get I was just chatting with my graduate writing class last night, and we were talking about chickens and killing chickens, and in a class of 5 graduate students, only one of them had ever killed a chicken. And I don't know how many. I'm pretty sure the ratio is higher in this group. Pinagdaanan natin yan, di ba? Nangingisay pa yung manok habang ginigilit mo dito at sasabog yung dugo at iipunin mo yun sa mangkok, no? Lalagyan ng asin. But students today have no such experience, because they get everything fresh in the grocery. So I asked them to describe. I've actually sent some of them. Sabi ko, pumunta nga kayo ng pumunta nga kayo ng farmer's market at mag-report kayo sa akin. Describe to me what you saw. And and some of them will say, oh, the big blue fish and the little red fish. They don't know the names of things. You must know these names if you are going to be writing well. But what I'm really talking about here is cultural literacy, which so many of our people have begun to lose, because our world has become so homogenized. We pick everything off a menu on screen and have everything sent to us by Lala Move, and so we lose that direct contact with the cultural experience of the ordinary Filipino. And that is a loss not just to our culture, of course, but to our creativity, because we now cannot convey a Filipino experience authentically, except of course in terms of Starbucks and all that, which have also become very, very Filipino. Speaking of the fish market, I asked them to describe for me, ano ba yung mga nakikita ninyong, the scales, the kaliskis of the fish. And I tell them, you look closely and some of them are as small and as shiny, as shimmery as sequins. Yung tinatahi natin sa mga damit noon. Some of them are as small as sequins, and some of them are as large and as dull as thumbnails. And they should be able to pick up on that. That is the writer's eye at work. You're always looking at things and you're always storing details that may not be immediately useful to you, but in some future work you may need to draw on. Okay. Observation, detail, atmosphere, selectivity. Okay. When you recall a scene, when you think of a scene, you're really asking yourself, or I'm asking you, what's in the picture? What are we supposed to see? Pag sinabi mong, EDSA 86, for example, so what about it? What am I supposed to look at? Am I supposed to be looking at the barrel of a tank, or am I supposed to be looking at a long street with hundreds of thousands of yellow-shirted people? What exactly is in the frame? Okay, I'm going to have you think of your scenes in terms of a visual pictorial frame, just like a cinematographer would. Think visually is what I tell my student writers. Do not think in terms again of generalities, but fill out that space. Even let's say when you have a scene with two people talking in a bar, it can't be just the two of them, two heads, in kind of medium close-up, two heads and maybe a table between them. You have to pull out a bit and show us other characters. That couple on the left, an older man, a younger girl, and they seem to be arguing. That couple, that table on the right, where there's a single, there's one woman in her 60s having a scotch and soda, and then there will be the window. What is outside the window? What is being reflected in the glass? You have to think of this like you were shooting the picture, again, because it helps in recreating an atmosphere. Okay, even the coloring, the lighting of that scene. Where is the light coming from? Is it intense? Is it pale? Again, these are all questions that writers ask themselves when they are creating something. Selectivity is important. You know, I told you earlier, you know, go out and hunt for details, or look at the details, all the little details in a particular scene. But like a good set designer or production designer, you don't have to fill every little corner with something. Well, of course, there's a theory that we Pinoys love doing that. Talagang pupunain natin, horror vacui, or more elegantly, they call it the Baroque sense of the Filipino, wanting to see little curlicues and details in everything. But you have to be selective when you describe just a few choice details. And you'll see this, for example, in, let's say, an Impressionist painting. The artists don't have to depict every single petal and every single drop of dew on these leaves. A few broad strokes, a little touches here and there will convey the entirety of the scene. And again, that is good writing. Selectivity of effective detail to help your scene setting. A few more things. I know it's now 4:45. I should be shutting up a bit, but a few more things. We can go up to 5 and do the exercise later. It won't take more than 15 minutes. There's also the matter of dialogue, which is a kind of a minor thing, but dialogue where it's good and necessary can keep the scene lively, can give it the flavor of lived experience because you're hearing people talking, and when they speak in this particular scene, you can see the character's personality and voice come through. Okay. So dialogue is simply that portion of the narrative where you say he said, she said. And by the way, when you say he said, she said, please do just that. Use said or asked or shouted, because some of my younger and eager students, I think eager to impress me, and this is really the hallmark of bad writing, will go to a thesaurus and dig up a nice, long, fancy equivalent for said. So instead of he said, they will say he expostulated. That's terrible. Just keep it simple, okay? In fact, the older I've gotten, the simpler my prose has become. And I think that's a matter of being more self-assured in terms of what you really want to say. It's no longer the vocabulary that carries the experience, but your choice of simple words. Simple but precise for that particular line, for that particular sentence and scene. So simple is better. Some special problems. Getting started. A lot of people tell me, my problem is, I have a lot of things to say, but my problem is just getting started with a damn thing. Saan ba ako magsisimula dito? And what I will often tell them is that, don't pressure yourself into starting with a big statement about life or, some dramatic opening line or scene. Start with something simple, like a concrete thing, And by this, I mean a thing like, like a cup of chocolate or a a bottle of ink or a yellow umbrella. Start with that and just begin describing things. And pretty soon you will see yourself and feel yourself hitting your stride. Okay? It's important just to get words on paper or again on the computer screen. And you can always come back and remove that. If that opening turned out to be awkward, then you can always come back and remove it. But it's important to get yourself writing with any kind of trick. My fellow writers and I used to have this trick back when we were starting out of just, we would get together and have beer and pandesal and sardines and challenge ourselves to write. And we would all begin by saying, okay, let's all start with this same first line, or we would pick a dictionary and just flip it at random and pick a word. And we will say, okay, let's all use this word just to get started. It's a kind of jump starting, but it helps. And pretty soon you will be on your way. As I said earlier about narration and exposition, do not ever begin by having big themes like freedom or justice in your head. That will emerge naturally. That will come. But if you start with that, I'm pretty sure I can guarantee you that you will emerge with something very wooden, because it has been too deliberately plotted out. Wala nang element of discovery, and you are just basically lecturing. Lilitaw din yan. If you're not interested in the material, if you feel forced in doing it, that will convey itself to your reader. Writing about other people, I suppose, is also a problem for some of us, because we don't quite know how to depict them. Especially if we're close to them, magagalit ba sila? Will you be representing them fairly, and so on. The way I work, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. The way I work is that I do a lot of biographies, and I interview them. I have them talk to me. I let them tell me their stories. So they're talking about themselves rather than me talking about them, and you can hardly go wrong with that. Of course, sometimes I know that they're lying, but that's part of that's their privilege, if they get found out. But I do represent what they say. I also do some research, and I find out something about the person, what's important to say about that person. And most of all, I try to bring out aspects of the person that other people never knew or never really noticed. And sometimes that's a surprise even to the subjects themselves. I'll give you a few examples later on. Tricks to keep going. People always ask me, how do I keep going on? How do I fill a page with 500 words? Or gastado na ako, pagod na ako, paano ko ba itutuloy ito? Well, first of all, a personal essay can theoretically be finished in 1 or 2 sittings. It'll be about 1,000, 1,500 words. Just to give you a sense of how long 1,000 words is, it's slightly longer than your typical Inquirer column. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Inquirer's op-ed page, and all the columns by editorial command, all the columns except for the long one on the side of Mike Tan, all the other columns are of the same size because they have an 800 word limit. So that's 800 words. You kind of do that and a little more, and you will have a good length for a personal essay. But when you're tired out, how do you continue? One practical tip that I give my writing students is don't stop at the point of complete exhaustion. Don't keep writing until late at night to the point when you no longer know what you're going to be saying next. Because what I do, especially if I'm working on long projects, again, like biographies, is I stop at a point where I know what the next sentence is going to be, or even the next paragraph. And instead of writing that out, I stop, I go to sleep, so that when I get up the next morning, I know exactly where I'm going to start, because I already thought about it the night before. And that gets me into the groove much more easily. Now I'll just spend a few minutes posting some things, and you will have your chance at asking me questions after your very short exercise. I'm just going to post something in the chat box that will show you the kind of work that I do in terms of narration and description. This is the hold on while I look for the chat box. Here we go. Okay. Oops. Why cannot I?
Screen share? Would you
No,
like to?
I wasn't. Wait. Okay, I'll just try screen sharing because I was going to
Load.
Cut and paste into the chat box. Sige, ito, I will try screen sharing na lang. I'll set it up here so that my screen is large enough. Hold on. I think we're doing okay for time limit.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Now, screen sharing. I'm sure that all of you at some point had a problem figuring Zoom.
Pwede ba
We still do.
Emmy, can you cut and paste in the
Post
chat box?
disabled. You have
Saan ba
to
yung
enable me, Emmy.
Chat
what
box.
should I do?
Pwede bang mag-cut and
Enable
paste?
participants. Enable me to screen share.
Yeah, can you
Okay,
cut
Andrew,
on an article
wait,
and paste,
I'll call my
paste
son.
on the chat box?
Andrew, I'm not very,
I don't
Take
think you
it,
can
take it.
edit in the chat box.
Kasi normally in chat box you type. Pero cut and paste is something.
Okay.
Andrew,
Or
help.
enable screen sharing na lang.
Enable, how do I do that? Wait, screen.
Sure.
How do I enable screen sharing for them?
I have Bible study at
Cut.
7.
Pause
Mas
recording.
maganda yung cut and paste on the chat box kasi he can fill it
Oh,
with
my.
more
Okay.
articles. He can fill it kasi screen sharing, you're limited to what's being
wait.
shown.
Click again.
Oo nga
Paano
eh,
ba yung cut
talaga.
and paste on
So, paano
the...
ba yun? Where
on
do
the
I
chat
go
box?
already? Where do I go?
I don't know. You ask your technical advisor, your son.
Nako,
How to
paano
cut and
ba
paste
ito? How do I
and
go
then-
to the chat box?
and-
Well,
Oh,
okay.
This is the
sige.
chat
First the chat box is
diba?
there.
Yes.
Oh, it's right here.
There's a chat box there.
Oh, and
I
then?
am
And then
trying.
how do you cut in an article and paste it there?
And chat.
I'm trying to cut lines from Word.
Cut lines from
Yeah.
how do you cut and lines from an another
Now,
document.
I'm
And
copying
paste it.
lines from,
Wait, Andrew,
from
you
Word,
And yeah, cut and
And then-
paste on the chat box.
trying to paste it in the chat box.
Yeah, that's the most It should be easy,
Oh,
but I have not done it
Oh.
myself.
Nandito na nga,
you can.
Andrew.
Ano ba, Chad?
Dapat na lang ni Andrew,
I
cut
think
and
you can
paste.
do it. Just try.
That's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Yeah,
fair.
Pwede yan,
I've been trying to do it, but it
You
won't.
see the chat?
Anyway,
See,
No.
Andrew should know. Andrew
I
should
can
know.
No, he doesn't know. Wait.
para hindi masayang ang time
Oh,
natin,
correct.
Okay,
Kasi
I'm going
sa
to chat.
box.
Okay,
We'll
that's
figure this
chat.
out.
He can
I'll
load
figure
many
this
things
out
there.
over.
For
It's going to be
everyone.
my break and your work
Correct.
work time.
Yeah.
I
We'll
would
why
like
figure
don't
it out first.
Sige, sige.
Can you send whatever
Yeah,
to my
I'll
to my Viber?
Sige,
Ah,
just
okay.
send
Send
me
the
your
articles. Send the articles to Emmy,
To my
and then
Viber,
Emmy
and
will
then I
figure it
can
out.
share screen it.
While we chat.
I have Bible study.
Sige,
yeah. Send
okay.
send me your email. Send me your
Your
email.
email
Messenger
address
sa
daw,
Messenger na lang, no?
I have Bible study.
or Messenger. To Emmy Hayward.
Messenger, Emmy
Emmy
Hayward.
Hayward.
Mm.
Okay, it will. My message will come from a guy named Noel Bulaong. That's me on Facebook because I
Okay.
don't do
Oh,
Facebook.
Bulaong.
That's the name of my. That's the protagonist of my first novel. So that's my
Oh.
alias, Emmy Hayward.
Yes. EMMY.
Got that?
You
Oh,
got
there's
it?
like a dozen Emmy Haywards here.
Oh my gosh.
The prettiest.
Yung pinakamaganda.
Oh yeah,
Butch.
studied marketing.
Yung naka-verses.
AIM. That's gotta be you,
One.
right?
Yep. There's one and only.
Ano yung nakalagay sa Messenger mo, ano?
Hindi
Your
bale.
face
Hindi bale. Yung verses.
Yeah.
You know
Okay.
what?
Andrew, you saw me?
Yun, okay.
Okay.
I just
I'm
waiting.
sent it to your messenger.
Okay. Wala pa.
Butch. Oh, it's coming. Butch,
Okay.
to distract you. May I ask a
Sige,
question?
Sige,
How
please.
was it working with Terry Boy Locsin? So sorry to ask a question. Because
No.
I had a chance. I know Teddy Boy, not that quite. We were together in the board of San Miguel. But
Well,
I was wondering how it is to work with Teddy Boy, because I see his Twitter, and sometimes it's shocking.
Marily, unmute mo yan.
we worked in the early 90s. Nung bagong labas yung newspaper niya, no? Yung Today. And we got along very well. Bakit? Wait. Kailangan
Butch, wala pa.
i-press yung-
Send.
Tinan mo
Send.
ulit. Na-press ko na yung send. Wala pa ba? Bakit kaya wala?
Baka ibang Emmy yung pinadalan mo, hindi kaya?
Ayun yung Emmy
Okay,
Hayward na graduate.
I'll go to you.
AIM.
Para,
Okay.
how can I go to you? Anong pangalan na? I'll just say
Noel
hello.
Bulaong.
Noel Bulaong. Sounds
At
like
Yung icon doon
sounds like a Bulakenyo name. Is that
Oo
correct?
nga.
Bulaong?
May mga kilala akong bulaong.
Hmm.
Teka lang.
Yun ang ginamit kong pangalan sa
Ayan, I
novela.
found it. Okay.
You're not
I'll say hi.
Yung may
you're not a
pusa.
Bulakenyo.
Okay, I sent you something. Hi. You can just reply to that.
Yeah, pero hindi pa rin pumapasok. Ay, something is really wrong here.
Okay.
Anyway,
In your
Send it
your
to me na lang
article-
sa email.
Butch, yung article mo is send it by email. Siguro it's more.
give me your email na lang in the
Okay.
chat box and I'll send
Teka,
it.
I'll send it to you. Okay, wait. Where are you? Wait. Okay.
Sige,
I'm
I'll send
sending
it while we are chatting.
All right.
So, Butch, you have not answered my question. So
Yeah.
sorry
Oh.
to.
He was actually
How was
very
it? How
easy
was it?
He was easy to
Easy
get
to work
along
with.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basta intelligente ka, you don't bullshit him. He'll take you
Okay.
seriously naman.
He will
Although-
respect you if
He'll
you're.
chew you
I
out
sent you
if
my
you're-
email.
Okay, bakit
So,
walang
no bullshit.
yeah, okay, got that.
Okay.
Pero
Okay.
pero later
Pero-
on, our relationship kind of got frayed. By later on, I mean nung naging ambassador at naging DFA na siya.
Oh, okay.
And you can imagine why. Especially those tweets of his.
Really?
Frankly,
How can you be a diplomat and say those words? Ganun ba yun? I mean,
exactly. Well,
how do you
Really?
reconcile ba?
Money talk.
Sorry,
Money talk.
Oh, come on.
I'm waiting ba?
Lumaki lang ulo.
Lumaki ulo.
siguro.
Wait,
Who's talking? Bambi?
I'm going to
That's you,
send you the whole
Sige.
thing.
Was that a comment from Bambi? Lumaki ulo?
Oo, si Rick Pasqua.
Okay, Rick. Pero Rick, hindi ba malaki na dati?
Hindi
Sorry,
ko naman kilala eh.
Proud
I mean, it's going to be a file titled AIM lecture, which includes all my notes. We're not going to talk about this whole file, but it's just
Yeah.
Uh,
the stuff I wanted to bring out is here.
Okay. Wala pa. I'll wait. Sige.
Ito na.
Coming?
Okay, I just sent that.
All right.
Butch, I remember a quote from CPR. He said something famously that
Andrew.
age does not matter as long as the matter does not age. Do you recall that?
That's
recall
true.
that?
Actually, it's kind of a risque reference, but if you read the autobiography of his second wife, si Beth Day, she offers testimony there that he
It's
may
true.
be old, but
It's
he
true.
can still get it up. It's a very candid autobiography. Actually, pretty well written. Pretty well written.
Butch, I think dumaan pa sa Quiapo. Wala pa eh.
Bakit kaya? Pinadala ko na i-check.
Pwede tayong Q&A muna. Q&A.
Oh,
Pwede.
sige.
Oh,
Diba?
Q&A. You
Pwede
know,
Q&A
actually,
muna so we can...
actually, given the time remaining, baka nga mag-Q&A na lang tayo. Kasi
Q&A na
I'm
lang.
worried that kung bigyan ko kayo ng exercise, baka...
Oo. You can just send me what you want me to send them, and then I'll just
Yes. And
distribute
then we'll talk
later.
about that.
Q&A na lang.
Yeah, Q&A na lang tayo.
Just a short comment, Butch. You know, we have a classmate, Freddy Burgos. I don't know if you've heard of him. Very famous, no? He worked for Ayala and then started up his own company. And it's a great story, no? Then I sent him a note and said, "Hey, Freddy, you have so many stories to tell. Why don't you just say it?" And you know what he said? You know, I'm having a hard time starting eh. And matagal na akong hindi sumusulat eh. Sabi ko, why don't you just, put it down, whatever thoughts you have in mind, and let the copy editors do the trick,
Yes.
But anyway, I thought I should mention to you now, I suspect that many of us are having a difficult time starting to write because, many of us have never really written. Or as managers, we say things, we write short memos, but that's about it. No stories or anything like that. So then 50 years later, you say, di ba, isulat mo nga yung memo mo, experience mo. I have difficulty. I want to say many things, but I can't start. On the other hand, we have a classmate who says, "Hey, I wrote 6,000 words. How do I cut it down to 1,000?" Things like those. So I just thought I should mention to you now, we're all struggling here, how to, because we want 30 articles or memoir. So far, I think we have 8. 8 yata. 8 lang.
Plus 2 little ones.
2 vignettes.
Oh, 2 vignettes and 8.
And the problem is, how do you tell these guys how to start? Because they have so many unique stories to say, but so hard because we're not writers, We're basically doers, no? We do things, we make things happen, but we don't write about them.
That's my line, Rene.
Emmy, You write very well. I mean, that's not your problem.
So that's
But
my
I know you.
line. I do.
Many of
This
us
is why
really are
this
not
is why I was
writers.
suggesting that lalo na doon sa mga hard starters, you just start with something
Nice.
relatively easy to write, like a specific memory of a specific day or of a person that whom you met, that time that like for example when I talked to yung mga managing partner ng SGB, I get them to relax and we just have a chat. I don't. Una kong tanong is not. So what was Wash like as a boss?
He was
no,
my
it's-
boss.
Yeah. Correct.
Kasi
8
pagka
years.
ganyan, on guard agad. Pero I just ask them simple questions about themselves. So so tell me something about yourself. Before SGB, saan ba kayo nanggaling? And then so when was the first time you met Wash? Do you remember that? And sabi niya,
Me? Oh.
doon sa isang partners meeting na ganito, ganyan. And then it begins to revive their memory. Sometimes actually it's easier when somebody's asking you that rather than you just coming out with it. You need to respond to specific questions. Ako ganyan ako magtanong. I don't ask the big policy questions muna.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, for example, I did a biography of the Lava brothers. I don't know if you remember sina Jesus Lava and Jose and their brother Horacio.
The Lava Brothers. Yeah, Lava Brothers.
Yung mga leader ng Partido Komunista nung 1950s.
Oh,
And
World
they
War
were
II.
they were expecting me to ask them about the Politburo and the Presidium of 1952 and yung policy ng partido. And I was asking them, so anong kinakain ninyo anong almusal ninyo? Ganyan, and so on. So this is a novelist at work. You ask about the little things and then you get to the big things. And by that time they're already relaxed and can really tell you more about themselves. Yeah, for example, the exercise I would have given you, which I will no longer do.
Yay!
Why not?
Thank you. Why not? Thank you.
Why?
Overtime naman tayo. Sige.
Out of time.
I think we should do what you planned.
Emmy, may I speak?
Oo.
Yeah, you want to do a
Mariel,
short one?
Emmy, can you hear me? Can you hear
can
me?
I? Yes, I can. Who's
See,
that?
Bambi.
Bambi.
Oh, Bobby, I can.
Okay, I'd like to bring in another point of view in response to what Rene shared. Na sabi ni Freddy Ceres Burgos, hindi na siya marunong magsulat.
Hindi ba marunong magsulat pero sinabi niya parang
Tinatamad.
matagal na siya hindi sumusulat. Matagal na lang hindi sumusulat.
Bambi.
Baka dati na hindi.
Natatawa yung isa, oh. Anyway, that's a problem which we should address. Kasi I think that's another way of saying it in a I don't want to write. So paano natin taatakin yun?
No, he wants to write.
Let me
Sabi ng difficult
Alam mo,
to start.
Rene, why don't he let one of his sons write for
I
him?
tried that.
Pwede
Sabi
naman
ko,
yun eh.
why don't you let one of your sons do it? Sabi niya, but I want to do it myself.
No.
I know my story. Sabi niya. No, I think let's give him time. But there's another problem. We have, I don't want to tell the name now. We have one classmate. He's a good writer. He's an excellent experience. He doesn't want to talk about himself. I hate to talk about myself.
Ay, si Butch yan. Si Butch. Parang hindi natin alam.
No, I'm just saying that.
Eh, journalist yun eh.
Stories when we have people who have difficulty starting.
Ako na
Or
bahala
people
kay
who don't want
Butch.
to write about themselves. Anyway, I should, maybe Butch can help us with the,
Let's get back to the exercise. Butch,
human nature. You're dealing with human nature.
Oh, iba na yun. Ibang story na yun, Rene.
I'd like to say something, Emmy.
Marie has the floor. Marie.
Butch said that one trigger that would, snap us out of, not being able to get started is to ask somebody else asking a question, that would trigger off your creativity. Perhaps we can ask Tony, being head of this, whatever it is, so you
Yeah.
in chief or
One
something.
is there.
Maybe Tony can come up with a list of questions just to help those guys who myself including, in terms of getting them excited about.
What did you have for breakfast?
When did you have breakfast?
A cup of chocolate.
Tony, seriously.
Iba yung ginawa ni Lolo sumunod siya dun sa question si Santi.
Yeah,
Oh,
Santi's
correct.
questions
Yun
are
ang
good.
ginawa niya.
Santi's questions are great.
So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very much better
that's
than
a really good idea. That you respond to a set of questions. Hindi naman necessarily mechanical yung response niyan eh. You can respond to some questions more than others.
Yeah.
Some questions you can probably ignore, but whatever floats your boat and gets you going. Ganyan naman typical sa mga people will have very different angles on this. I imagine. Kaya nga again, and I really think Marily, with your permission, if we can just continue talking because there's a lot to talk about.
yes, sure, yeah.
What I would have wanted you to do was really to write about your first day at AIM.
First day? Oh my
Very
God.
nice.
Wow.
The first thing that you saw when you crossed the street and entered that campus,
Beautiful. Yeah.
what was it like? Whom did you see?
second year.
I forgot.
How did you
I
feel?
got lost.
We were
Where
in
were you?
the,
Where were you?
that was the
Literally and
old
figuratively,
building.
where were you coming from?
At Padre Faure yan, di ba?
Oh, sa Padre Faura.
First day.
Saan ba yung school niya noon?
Eh, sa Ateneo yun,
Hindi
old
din Ateneo,
campus.
Padre
Padre
Faura.
Faura. Yung
Mas
old
Padre
Faura.
Padre Faura. The first
Ateneo,
I
the old
see, I
Ateneo
see.
campus.
Actually,
At
it
that
smells like a
At that
fish.
time, I was working across the street sa NEDA.
Yeah, it smells
Wala.
Alam mo,
market.
there are three Butch. There are three groups eh. Merong Ateneo, may Lasal, and all the rest. Sa amin.
Okay.
So yung mga Ateneo, they talk to each other, walang problema, Lasalista. Kami mga outsiders, we didn't know a soul, and we didn't know anybody amongst ourselves. So we had difficulty,
Exactly.
relating. Sino ba itong mga ito? Pero sila, nag-grupo-grupo na, mga Ateneans, Lasalista, and then the rest of the world. Ganun.
And there you go. There's your story.
Yeah, beautiful.
Pag sinabi mo,
Ganda.
you can write a whole essay about Padre Faura itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked on that street for 10 years and halos bawat puno diyan kilala ko na noon, pero ang dami-dami kasi mga corners diyan na when you write about AIM, you're not just writing about the school, you're writing about the environment, you're writing about yung mga drinking spots diyan, restaurants.
So Butcher, we were saying, ano ba ito? May mga kumpul-kumpul. Pero kami, isa-isa kami dito. Ganun.
That's a good start. That's a good start.
I didn't know you felt that way, Rene.
Yeah. We were
Rene,
total strangers.
when I first,
Diba? Can we hear from Santi? I'd like to get the reaction of Santi to this discussion because he was.
I'm just enjoying the conversation, Tito. But what about this thing that I don't know to write? You all wrote what reports? Don't tell me you don't know how to write.
Yeah.
exactly.
You all passed.
Kung pumasa ka
Because
kay
written
Santi.
analysis of cases, you had that every other week. You worked at it. I hope you remember. I don't remember your grades, but you all passed. So, what you say when you say, hindi ako marunong magsulat, my God, I feel bad.
So, such a fault.
Parang
Tinatamad
case
lang
study.
sila. Tinatamad lang.
Tamad lang. Mga don't get, class 71, as I always say, you are,
We were
don't
the best.
underestimate yourselves. You have a lot of stories. And Butch Dalisay here has been very helpful in giving us guidelines. Just start and don't give excuses. That's not an AIM education giving excuses.
Correct.
So that's all for now.
Yeah, you can also ask yourself,
Sabi nga ng lolo ko,
what did you
pagka
bring to
gusto,
AIM?
sabi nga ng lolo ko, pagka gusto may paraan. Pag ayaw, may dahilan.
What did we bring to AIM? Kami ni Marie, we brought our short skirts. Our mini skirts.
Oo
In
nga,
fact,
no?
the first day in class, si Malonzo, remember Malonzo?
Robert.
Yeah, Robert.
He was sitting right in front of me, and I heard him say something not very nice. Anyway,
Binatukan mo?
hindi ko binatukan, nasa harap ko eh. Kung nasa harap, tabi ko sana, pero malayo eh. But anyway.
Kaming dalawa ni Godo, pinapagalitan ka namin pag nagpantalong ka eh.
Oo, bastos ka yan, ha?
Sumasama ang view.
Galing nyo.
But Lenny, panganiban niya yung short skirt.
Lumalabas naturally kung ano yung mga pwede niyong pagkwentuhan.
Oo, totoo yun.
We're not looking for earth-shaking events. We're looking for these intimate glimpses into your personalities as they were being formed at AIM.
Somebody mentioned the name of Lenny Panganiban.
Yeah, she had the shortest skirt.
It was very difficult to ask. I need help with Lenny. Hindi ako sinasagot eh.
Kala ko ba favorite ka niya?
Oo nga.
Marie, ikaw na lang, Marie.
Marie, kasama kayo sa yan.
Bambi doon.
Talaga?
Oo, malakas si Bambi doon eh. But I will try. Okay, I will try.
Try again.
Help me please. Tapos, I'd like to address yung
Emmy, I have a suggestion.
Lasal, no?
Yeah, Mariel. Excuse me.
Bambi still talking.
Bambi. So, finish up.
Magsalita, no? Sa tingin ko, Rene, yung mga atinista, hindi guilty na nag-umpukan. Yun lang mga lasal. Kasi safe ako magsalita. Walang lasal dito eh.
So, Mariel, you have the floor. Mariel.
What exactly is the role of Marily? Marily?
She's the creative producer of the entire book. Oh,
okay,
possibly the book.
Yeah, okay. Just the way I observed the meeting today, these guys are being stimulated to recall some incidents or events or situations in their early AIM years. So why don't you organize with Marily as a moderator another 1 or 2 more meetings para ma-stimulate yung memory making o memory recreating. Memory jogging.
Ang problema, Mariel, ang mga nag-attend, parehong tao eh. Pare-pareho rin, kami-kami.
Maybe it's the kwentuhan that will stimulate.
Nagsulat na kami, we have books. I mean, we have write-ups done, most of us, except for a few.
So those who are here have already written.
I'll just share what we did to St. Teresa's because for our Jubilee year, I also did a book called Reverie. Ano rin siya, creative nonfiction. So everybody was scared to write. So ginawa namin, every 3 weeks, we would have dinner. And during those dinners, I would read somebody's entry.
Yes.
Mine!
Ang una kong entry na binasa kay Emmy. So I could see, if Nanette is here, I could see my friends, nakatingin na yung eyes nila nasa ceiling, nag-iisip na sila, nag-iisip.
Yes.
And then the next week, after na nag-meet kami, I would read 2 stories na. Before we knew it, ayan na lahat sila. The ones that didn't know how to write, ang ginawa namin, tulungan namin. We divided the class. Yung mga hindi marunong, sige, dito, Zenny, ikaw dito, yung interview, and then write it for them. So that's what we did. Si Nanette wrote it on her own. Ang saya-saya namin, you know. That made the class very, very close.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, it made us close.
I think
I know, man.
Marily, that I think Marily, what you did with Reverie would really come up a very good suggestion for this.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
you can have get-togethers and then
Kayo dapat
Pwede
yun.
pandemic pandemic.
Sa
And
Zoom
then
nga
sa
eh.
Zoom, sa Zoom.
Zoom. Oo.
Wala
And then
na,
in the
Zoom na.
Paano ko
end,
mag-dinner sa Zoom? Nasa
and
yung
then
mga
in the
kaibigan natin?
end, oo. In
Butch,
the end,
Butch, I have a
when we
question.
It's a
in the
good idea
end,
to read
Butch,
one
I have a
too.
question.
yeah.
I have a question with Butch.
In the end, when nobody wanted to write anymore and we still had to have entries, what we did was they went how do you call one-on-one. So like remember Mary Lee, Anel, and somebody else they would talk, and then they would just come up with something. Diba, Mary Lee? Remember that?
Two weeks before printing, I was having to write one last story for one classmate.
That's right. Gana, your turn.
Okay. Yeah, Butch, just a question. Kasi, I'm not I don't write it. So, but sa management association, we are asked to write articles. Write articles, ba? Write articles. So I write every now and then. But I just wanted to give an observation. Now, this is my first time to hear na you can write pala in color like a movie. Kasi somehow, when I see things in color, but when I write, I see black and white.
Black and white and gray.
How do you explain that, Buchan? When I write, it's black and white. I don't see color. But your suggestion is parang, hey, it can be like a movie pala when you write. You can add color to it.
Of course you can.
So how do you evoke that kind of
embellish?
Kasi the tendency is for especially for those who don't habitually write, writing, they see writing as an intrinsically formal thing. Para nag-exam. That what you write will be read and therefore it has to come out really nice and cuadrado and but that's not true. Writing is messy. Okay.
It is.
And that's why it's fun. It should be messy and fun, and then you begin to structure it. The secret of good writing is in the revision. You just put everything down on paper, kahit hindi in sequence yan, kahit sabog, basta it comes out of your mind. Just put it down there, and then you begin organizing things later on. There are basically two kinds of writers. When we think of writers, dalawang klase yan. Isa yung tinatawag na yung taker-outer na susulatin na niya lahat, ang haba-haba, punong-puno na, and then we'll begin to take out things. Yung isa tinatawag na inner putter, yung halos outline lang, tapos pupunuin niya unti-unti. And you can be one of those people. There's no hard and fast rule what you should be. If I told you stories of how strangely writers wrote, like some people like Hemingway would write standing up. I forgot the writer who liked to lie in a coffin before getting up to write. Kanya-kanyang kawirduhan yan eh. But just to get things going, Pero yun nga, the idea is, as was mentioned earlier, it must be fun. It has to bring out something exhilarating in you. Otherwise, it's drudgery. This is not writing an office memo or a case study or
a walk.
This is meant to get away from that. So this is really this is the side of AIM and of you that nobody has ever seen. Parang yung kwento ko dyan kay one of the things I put in the examples I was going to show you was a scene from the biography of Wash that I wrote. And it's a scene that is absolutely not wash. It's a scene where, you know, after the war, when he got a job, I think this must have been before the war. Before the war, he got a job with a company in New York, and one of their clients was a duck farm, pato, and one of the things that he got as a freebie was a duck. Pwede siya mag-uwi ng pato, dressed. You know? And I have a scene there where Wash is riding the subway in New York with a dressed duck under his arm, and he's going to bring this as a gift to a girl.
Oh my gosh!
Whom I suspect was his crush, except na girlfriend na yun ng isang friend niya. Hindi niya. I actually tracked that girl down. She was 95 or 90 something.
You did.
Then I brought them back together.
You're kidding.
That's in the book. But you look for moments like that where the character kind of goes against character, you know, in a situation you would never imagine. And this is the good thing about a character like Wash, because before he became Wash, the big, you know, SGV founder, he was a very interesting fellow. You know, hindi pa nga yung code breaker in India, but the great thing about him is that he grabe yung memory niya. He remembers things from when he was 5 years old.
That's right. Yeah.
And then he lived to be in his 90s. So for a biographer like me, I had so many decades to cover. Whereas other people, 60 pa lang, tapos na yung kwento nila. And Wash remembered everything. So he was in that sense the ideal biography subject, candid, a good cuento, but you had to prod him with questions so that he would remember. And I think over our conversations, he was having a lot of fun. Kasi nga, tinatanong ko siya ng mga bagay na hindi siya usually tinatanong ng mga interviewer. Because I was interested in him as a person, and not as an icon. Although of course he was that. So Eto, you can think of this as the ADB and the you that people have never really seen, with your vulnerabilities, but also of course with your ambitions and your your determination to succeed. So when I say what did you bring to AIM, o saan ba kayo nanggaling when you went to AIM, that's in both a literal and metaphorical sense. Saan ba kayo nanggaling? O nanggaling that day nanggaling ako sa bahay ko sa Santa Ana, and I took a bus and hanggang mating ako sa Ayala, sa Padre Faura or whatever. But you're also saying metaphorically that you came from modest origins. You know, you could talk about your father being a government clerk or a teacher or ganyan, and now you're setting foot in AIM, and once you establish that context, then the story acquires a larger more gravity, because we want you to succeed. Kasi you are there representing the rest of the people who wanted that slot, and now you're there. Why did you deserve that? What did you do to get there? And what was it like after your first week? Mga ganyang memories.
Butch.
Yes.
Another
please,
question,
sir.
Madam Chair.
Sure.
So how do you capture one's life in 1,500 words? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
How do you capture? You're saying hanggang 1,000 ka lang, or 1,000. And there's Loloy who wrote 6,000 words, no? Which is fine because they were able to edit. They were able to cut it down. No? But I'm just saying, how do you capture a life which expands, 70 years or 50 years at least, no? and do it in 1,500 words. Di ba napakahirap?
In essays like this, it's best to focus on one or two specific memories, and flesh that out as well as you can, and you can have a little, what we call a flash forward, a kind of a jumping to the future. You can say something like, and 50 years after that, crossing that street again, I felt exactly the same rush of excitement, but this time because blah blah blah. You can give a little foretaste of what you would become, but you can't tell your whole life story
Correct.
unless, I mean, you can, but it's going to be a synopsis. It's going to be like an encyclopedia entry on you,
and boring,
which is not the purpose.
And then,
we want to just see a little intimate glimpse of you at that particular moment.
But Butch, on top of that, it's hard enough to put your life in 1,500 words. Eh, may nagtanong pa si Professor Santi na, can you so add your view about the whole world? So how do you how do you capture that in 1,000 or 1,000?
There are ways of doing that.
Ganon. So how do you do it? I mean, tell us the tricks. No?
Mga detalye na lang. Let me ask you, anong year ba kayo pumasok sa AIM?
69.
Not just
69.
Uy, 69.
69, the best year.
1959
best numbers.
Was one of the most dynamic years in human history. Okay, you had the Sharon Tate murders. You had the moon landing.
The first man on the moon, I think.
Yes, first man on the moon.
Yeah.
You had Woodstock.
Wow.
Okay, Woodstock, remember, guys? And then you had Gloria Diaz win Miss Universe.
Gloria
Beatles.
Diaz.
Ang dami nangyari ng 1969.
First quarter
you can contextualize. Worldview, for example, on your way to Padre Faura, baka may nakita na kayong placard or something, somewhere, whether sa Quiapo or sa ano, there are details you can pick out to convey the flavor of the times. Ano yung tumutugtog sa bus, di ba? Ang iingay ng mga bus noon, may mga
Details.
Oo. This is what I mean by setting up the scene. No, ano yung tabas ng pantalon mo, di ba? Parang mga
high waist.
So Butch, you're telling us na you're telling us to paint. You're telling us to paint, no? Parang painter.
Yes.
You're telling us to paint in one, you capture 50 years or 70 years of your life, and on top of that, your view of life. Parang ganon.
Hindi 70 years.
So how do you make it so interesting?
Ano lang?
Huh?
One representative moment.
One or two.
Yes, one or two.
And the rest you skim through.
Don't worry, because I'm sure if you come out with a publication, there is going to be an about the author's thing at the end, which will list down ano nang nangyari sa inyo after that. So your little CV will be there. Okay? But this particular essay is really to capture you as a young person on the way up.
Butch, what would you advise? What would you advise the widows? I mean, it's hard enough for us to talk about ourselves. What are the widows talking about their hobbies? How would you advise them to look at it and to handle it?
I think Marily will remember that there's actually a book by widows,
Yeah.
Libro ng Marily?
Yeah.
You had one?
Yes. Linda Panlilio had an anthology of written by widows and widowers. Sila Jimmy Laya. I was there, whatever.
Cesar Benaventura.
Cesar.
Yes.
Cesar.
His first wife, of course. Pero may mga ganyan talagang kasi ang kagandahan nitong creative nonfiction, nitong mga personal essays, is that everybody can really be a writer. You know? And I mean that. I mean, you may have, some people may have grammatical problems. Some people may have problems expressing themselves. But that's the job of an editor, to fix up. But I've always told my classes that I really think that in every person has at least one good story to tell, and it's my job to get that out of you. Okay, and if you're sitting in my class, I will get that out of you. And it happens naman. They get surprised na, aba, nasulat ko to. It's a matter kasi of assuring the person na wala namang masamang mangyayari sa kanila if they write technically poorly. I never flunk my students unless they're habitually absent.
Right.
Basta present ka, pasado ka. At I'm sure may natutunan ka rin kahit papano. But it's really a matter of encouraging people to open up.
Alam mo, Butch,
Kasi nga, yung mga iba ayaw talaga eh.
Alam mo, Butch, nag-attend ako dito, nakikita ko na nakakatulong yung gusto itong sinasabi mo sa amin. Sayang nga lang na yung mga taong may kailangan ng tulong para ma-inspire mo, hindi sila nag-attend.
Kaya nga eh.
That's the problem now.
No, but
It's recorded, Bambi.
so we can just
I'm recording it. I will share it to all.
Terrific.
Para they won't miss out.
Butch, were you able to complete your talk? Because you were,
Yes.
I think, stopped, or was that the complete talk?
No, I was going to give you examples from my writing of scenes that were set up, and one of them, and I was going to show you actual demonstrations, you know, what I mean by detail in description. One of the things that I sent to in that email to Emmy was the opening scene of my biography of Wash. And this is what I mean by scene selection, okay? Especially given that, you know, I interviewed Wash over maybe almost a year. You know? Saturday morning, 7 o'clock, you know, alam mo si Wash, alas 7 yan, nandun na. So I would sit with him and we would just chat in his office for an hour or two. And after all of these interviews, as a biographer, I ask myself, so where do I begin? Okay, same problem that you have, except na ito biography. So mas mahaba. Given a man who had at that time lived almost 90 years, where do we begin? Do we begin when he was born? Parang corny naman yun. You know? So I chose a moment in his life when he was facing a decision. This was when he was coming back from the States, you know, from his, kasi nagsundalo nga siya sa India and Burma border. And then he went back to the States muna, and then he took a ship back to Manila. And he did not know whether his father, Albino, was alive. Ang balita niya, pinatay ng mga Hapon eh. So he was full of dread and full of questions. And then he did not know whether he would stay in Manila or go back to the States, because he had a job offer waiting for him in the States. And this was his first real job offer. And you won't believe what it is. It was to be an auditor at Women's Wear Daily. Ayun sana yung trabaho niya. So I chose that moment when the ship docked into the harbor in Manila. And Wash is there standing at the bow, looking at the pier. No, parang yung sa Titanic, andun siya. Kasi ginawa niya talaga yun. Pinento niya naman sa akin eh. Kasi noong nag-dock yung ship niya, hindi nga makadock ng buo kasi nataon naman na merong strike ng longshoremen. After all these years, nag-strike yung mga trabahador sa pier, hindi ngayon siya makababa. So imagine pagkabitin niya. And he's looking at Manila Bay, at Manila, which was devastated by the war. He's thinking of his father, he's thinking of his future. So this is one of the most dramatic points in Wash's life. And I chose to begin the biography there. You know, and the title of that part was Passenger on a Ship, which was what he was. So this is what I typically do with my biographies. I pick a dramatic moment that will catch the reader's attention, and then I move back to the beginning of that person's story.
Was that book just a bookkeeper?
Yes, just a bookkeeper.
He was,
Yeah.
to start with.
Yeah, and that's what he called himself. So ginamit namin na title yon for the book. You know, one of the things, hindi ko plinano ito, but after Wash, everybody and his brother wanted me to write their biographies. Some of them people I did not even want to write for or write about, but I was convinced to. And you know, someone like Rudy Cuenca, for example, you know, the Marcos crony, and he asked me to write this biography, and I said, "But Mr. Cuenca, your boss put me in prison because nakulong ako ng martial law.
Talaga, Butch?
Why should I write about you?" And then he told me, ang nag-go between sa amin si Jimmy Laya, who was a mutual friend.
Oh.
And then he told me I had stories to tell. Okay. You know, I have stories to tell about how things work in the Marcos cabinet and regime, and that I thought was a good hook. And I got him to tell those stories, and I found it very interesting. Basta sinasabi ko lagi sa kanila, I will not lie for you. If you tell me something that seems to be a lie to me, I will quote you verbatim. Bahala kang mag-explain yan. And that's how I've managed these things. But writing about people is, you know, is both
personal,
exciting.
diba?
Yes, it gets very,
It's a
very
commitment.
personal. Yes, and you know, you meet all kinds, especially yung mga Taipans natin. And, you know, the Chinese are the most difficult to write about because they have so many secrets.
Yes, Enrile.
That is something I would not have taken on. Although my friend did, si Nelson Navarro, I've actually said no to some people because, well, you know, you have a choice naman. But lives, human stories are fascinating, and the job of the biographer or even the autobiographer, which you will be, writing about yourself is really going after the character of the person, revealing that person under stress. So it's not just the good stuff, but how do they respond to crisis? And this is what these question and answer sessions eventually get down to. After what did you have for breakfast? Mamaya na doon na tayo sa mga krisis sa buhay mo.
Butch, I did not get that email, huh? Maybe you should resend it?
I will resend it. I'll make sure that you get it and that it's circulated.
And we're recording the entire thing, so I'll send it to everyone too.
Emmy? Pwede magtanong, Emmy?
Of course.
Habang narin pa si Butch.
Of course.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, tama pa si Blair. Kasi we're planning, because of some constraints like our finances, to come up first with a e-book, no? It will not cost anything to print. But that's eventually, right. the objective is to come up with a printed book, no?
Yes.
Eventually. So yes. I'm bringing this up just to get from you some pointers on how we probably should, is this the right way to do it? Because if we go straight to a book, we don't know if we have the necessary interesting content to really sell it. And especially now when so few people are reading books already. I mean, you know.
That's true.
So can you give us some your thoughts about this matter, about how you would probably suggest that we proceed? Because this is really more of the way I look at it, like to me, one motivation, it's like coming up with a legacy, not really
Yes.
for the country, even though some of us have served in both in national and local levels and private and public. But, I'm really serious, because I'm preparing for this one. And I was surprised. I saw a lot of materials that I have just put somewhere in a bin. And now I take a look at it. And then, my son helps me look at it. And he says, Dad, my God, I didn't know you did all of these things. You were involved in these things. How come you don't tell your story? And precisely you said because you don't want to involve other people who might not like exactly the way you say it, or it might be a secret or whatever, no? So because of your experience, can you give us some pointers on how to proceed? That's why we got you, is to encourage us to write. But now that I'm listening to you, it's more of, it's turning out to be something. It might be really an opus, in the sense that you were just planning to write an article for an essay of yourself for the benefit of our class, but which could eventually be a contribution towards future generations to ponder and look and read later on.
Yes. Well, if you say that you're thinking of a book, then that book will necessarily have to be more substantial. I mean, even in terms of size, because even if all of you wrote essays, it will still not be enough to even reach 100 pages, I think, in book form. So you will clearly have to produce more. And this may be the opportunity for some, if not all of you, to come out with longer think pieces about precisely your personal philosophy. Now that you have come this far, it would be good also to have an anchor like your vision of the Filipino future, or what I want my grandchildren to know, or to learn, something like that. That will put you all on the same plane. Hindi naman kailangang highfalutin essays lahat. I mean, some of them can be very philosophical, but some of them can be very personal. Like, this is you talking to your apo. Dear apo, when you grow up and you're old enough to understand what I'm saying now, I want you to read this. Ganon. This is my letter to you. Or letters to my apo. Ganyan.
Yes, that's an idea.
Very good. Yeah.
This will bring
Santi
out.
told us earlier. Actually, that's how the whole project started with Santi. He came up with this idea, and that's exactly how he started. He said, "Why don't you write a letter to your grandchildren? What you want to tell them?" That's exactly.
So imagine that. Kung wala ka mang apo, then then to the Filipino youth. I think that will be a very worthwhile, because it will also sum up your own learnings through all of these decades of experience and contributions to national policy and and business, and I think that is really a legacy. So you have a fun part where you recall your earliest, the before part and then the after part. That will be a book.
Sorry, Butch. So we're thinking of 30 memoirs. That will not make a book, but will it?
No, we're aiming for 250 pages minimum. If we reach that, we have
what's
a
a
book.
book? How many pages? How many pages to make a
250,
book?
diba, Marily? 250.
250. And then with 30 memoirs,
Depends on the layout.
30 times.
Yung
30
search
times.
namin,
Times 2 pages, 60 lang yun.
no.
Diba? 2 pages.
Marily, explain nga.
Yeah, well, we did Reverie. We had 31 stories. Pero nilagyan ko pa rin siya ng artwork sa loob. We broke it.
Artwork and
Graphic.
Pictures,
Tapos,
mga
and
litrato.
pictures.
we didn't have
Correct.
No. Ang pictures namin sa likod. Yung picture ng author, ng writer. Pero
Hindi, sa atin meron.
So 32 pages each. That's only 16, di ba? 16 lang. Or,
kaya dapat medyo madami-dami, mga 1,500 words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we limited to 1,000.
Well, kasi kami, when I told my class 2,500, they all fainted. They all said, we cannot.
Haba.
Write a business letter, sabi nila. But you
Ito
know,
mga word.
Mahaba.
pero
Kailangan
from
pala
funding
mahaba-haba.
and we helped each other, naka 2.5 lahat sila. Danet,
So,
2.5.
Ako din.
So pwedeng 1.5 to 2.
Sa mga libro ngayon, we don't do by pages now. We do it by word count. Okay. I'll show you something. Typically, this is my biography of Ed Angara. Something like this will be about 60,000 words.
60,000 words.
If you have 30 times 1,500, you have 45,000. Pwede nang paabutin ng isang libro yon with maluwag na
Pictures.
May mga pictures pa.
Artwork.
Tapos maluwag na layout kasi nga medyo senior na yung mga magbabasa.
Ayun.
Basahin pagkasiksik. Pwede naman pilitin pero maganda ring opportunity kung gusto nyo, di palaguin nyo pa. Hindi naman necessarily siguro na everybody write another essay. But some of you, like those of you in your class whom you look up to as achievers and visionaries, can do this kind of summing up and in effect speak for the rest of the class. You can have like five long essays.
That's a good idea.
Sino lang may gustong gumawa. Para it's not obligatory in everyone. And that should be enough to fill up that, kung gusto nyong habulin talaga yung regular na book size and book length, you can do that. Para hindi mandatory sa lahat.
Yeah.
Para it remains fun and also meaningful.
Okay. Yeah. We're running a bit to our time limit. Is that okay if we go over time a bit? Butch, or
I'm fine.
Okay.
I just want to insert this word of caution na kasi, which I'm sure you probably already know, that projects like this that involves classes, batches of alumni, and I've seen this dozens of times in yearbook projects, hindi ba? Yung eto na, 50 years na tayo, mag-yearbook ulit tayo. And sooner or later, it will devolve into gulo. It's so difficult to bring people together and to literally get them on the same page. Kasi yung iba, ganito lang sasabihin, yung mga iba gusto punuin 2 pages, kahit tigo 1 page lang ang allotment. Yung iba gusto gusto litrato pati ng pamilya ng mga anak nila sa Canada o ano. Yung iba gusto ganito lang. So you are going to have to manage. This is really, well, you guys should be good at this. This is really people management. But just the human factor is very, kaya I want to keep it on the level of fun.
Yeah.
I think on that first level, memories of AIM, fun pa yan. Pero yung sa yung kung gagawa kayo ng second part, yung mas seryoso, hindi na obligatory yun. Para talagang yung gustong gumawa lang at yung kayang gumawa, sila magpro-produce. And it will still be fun for the others.
I think it's necessary yung sa pictures, right from the start, we should be clear.
Yes.
To what extent you'll be having pictures. You might have somebody with all of his grandchildren and he expects...
Correct.
Alam na ako, nagsulian ng andila dahil yan.
We should be clear on what are the rules. So to manage expectation right from the start.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Tito. We have to.
Emmy, can I just insert?
Yes, please.
Alam mo yung after Reverie, gumawa kami sa St. Teresa's ng portal. Lahat nag-obey. Yan ang nobody, yun ang maganda pala sa St. Teresa's. They all obeyed. 2,500, may theme. No complaints. Everybody did it. They got edited, and they were happy. And we launched everywhere in the US. So talagang people management kasi mahirap because, pero nobody fought. Mabait pala St. Teresa's talaga. No?
Nobody
Hindi, mabait din naman kami. Marily, okay lang. Manageable.
Oh.
kaya natin.
Mr.
Versus-
Santi, would you
So,
like to say a few words in parting? Or somebody else has a question?
Well, I would
Maybe I
like
just-
to take the cue from Butch
Maria
Dalisay
Sandere.
about eventually this can go into a book. You know, I think big for this class. There are
Thank
so
you,
many
Santi.
rich stories, inspirational, interesting, revelatory, that you can tell. And once you start writing, you get into the momentum. So I really am against limiting the number of words. Let the editors do that a little later. But I am really, Butch, I am always for the printed book because particularly when you're talking about 50 years, it's once in a lifetime. And you fall in love with a book. I don't know about, I might be old fashioned, but looking for a gadget to read is alien to me. I like to have a book. I fall in love with a book. I have it beside bedside. I have it in the car. I have it in the office. I have it in the sala. And I like to have really a nice book for this. This is not just any graduating class. This is the first.
Yes.
The golden harvest of AIM. And they're all very successful. So really, I'd like to present books for you. I don't know if you've seen this book. This is the 50 years of Phoenix in which I had some participation. And I'd like something like this for the class. This book, by the way, has won some Quill Awards this year. So I like something like this for
It's a coffee table, yeah, no?
Yeah. So I'm gonna let's go ahead and start inviting them to write. In the ultimate, if they don't want to write, we'll go for the interviews one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what Butch did.
And even if you don't make December 2021, it's all right. January 2022, it's still all right. Because it is what it's
worth it.
Class 71, you are one, this is once in a lifetime. And you have so many things to do. And I like the vision that, Butch gives to us. That, that's the fun part. And there is the legacy part. And you have so many things to say to the next generation. And particularly, Butch, 1960, I started this book because 1969.
69?
No. Start of 67 of Phoenix. And I look at this book now and I say, I'm glad I did something like this. And now everybody was always debating before that in Phoenix. They're all geniuses there by themselves. You don't make money out of that. It will just gather dust. Why are we paying so much, etc. The writers, we as writers, we don't even charge anything for this. We did it out of love. But now that it has won the 3 Quill Awards, everybody say, oh, galing natin. So what I'm saying is, Butch, thank you for the encouragement. I've been trying to pretend to be a writer myself, but I learned a lot from you. Thank you very much. And I'm still going to write about myself, and I will attend more of your workshops because I have a lot of secrets I know about Lopez's, Ayalas, that I want to tell while some of them are still alive.
Okay. Okay.
Marielle, you had a
Yeah,
last thing?
I thank you for the encouragement, Butch. We will go ahead with the
You're welcome.
project. And actually, I was the one who have been egging them to do this.
Fantastic.
And you
Wonderful.
Yes.
are all that we needed to get this done. Thank you, Butch.
Yes.
Thank you.
One last question for Marielle or comment?
Yes, Marielle.
Marielle.
Yeah, I just realized during this last 2 hours that there needs to be maybe a small committee to firm up the concept of the book, because we really have to be clear. Is it just a family book? Is it just memoirs for personal purposes? But now it seems, as Santi expressed it, there's a bigger vision, because Santi has parang an opinion or impression of what class 71 is all about. Of course, he's entitled to that, and because he can see the wider view, I think. While, for example, someone like me, I can only see one person who is a member of the class. But the professor has that wider view, and maybe he realizes what the class as a whole has contributed to Philippine society. And that's a very valid view, I think. And it can give gravity to the book, gravitas to the book, and make it worth reading. Because at first I was thinking, sino naman ang gustong bumili nitong mga memoirs nitong 30 people na to, you know? If it is just personal memoirs, maybe not. But as also Butch suggested, if there are some substantial essays in between, giving deeper perspectives of Philippine society, Philippine business, Philippine finance, and so on, it will have substance. So I think there needs to be a group of you who will really firm up what the book is all about. Because the tendency, I thought before, the tendency was, okay, just write your memoirs and so send your pictures, even of your families, your grandchildren, and so on. Parang slam book. No? Pero mukhang nagiging more of substance the way I see it now this afternoon. I'm realizing it has potential, really.
Yeah, it's quite organic talaga, Marielle. It's evolving into something which we don't know what the final animal will look like, but in the meantime, we're just gathering articles. And then, sabi mo nga in the beginning, once that's done, then we can see the shape and the form, and maybe make a
even the
decision.
title will emerge.
Correct. So
I also support what Santi said, that if it has to be one-on-one interviews with people like Freddy Teres Burgos, who put up Landco, which is a very significant company and has made a contribution. If it takes a one-on-one interview to pry his story out of him, then do so.
Are you volunteering?
No, I'm not. I have to write Cheetah story. No, but I mean to say, that's the kind of investment that you must be prepared to make. Send somebody to interview him. And Butch, ano itong Butch natin?
Parang it's becoming more than a year book.
Pagod na siya.
Parang more than a year book.
No. Maybe, it's not just a yearbook, in other words. It's not just for your class.
We thought it's just a yearbook. Now we're saying it's more than a yearbook.
Yeah.
Eventually.
That's
evolving.
that's what is emerging, I think. Because the way Santi puts it, wow, you were the first class of AIM. You have all been successful in your fields. So mukhang may sinasabi,
Marielle, may I add, Marielle, for everybody, this year happens to be a very Well, it's a very different year. A year of pandemic,
Medyo
a year of
nahalata ako.
upheaval, a year of, a changing society, creeping authoritarianism, and we are all saying, okay lang. And then so many things happening in society. And what are we doing as AIM graduates, the first fruits? Are we going to be just spectators?
Ako, ibang storya na yan, Santi.
Di ba?
Lumalaki
That's another level.
Mariel,
That's another level.
this is important because
important.
whether you like it or not, you as AIM 71, you are the first fruits in, call it destiny. It's no coincidence that you are the first graduates and you are here celebrating 50 years at this time in the point of our Philippine history. Seize the moment, carpe diem.
Amen. Oh.
First,
I'm getting carried away.
Maybe somebody can write that in a foreword.
Yes.
That sounds more like a foreword to the book.
Write it.
That's going to be Santi. Yes.
That sounds like a Santi article.
Santi, you write the foreword because you have that view, that wide view. Yeah. I don't think any of these AIM guys will write about that.
Yeah, that's yours, for sure.
Yeah.
So, between, where do we go from here?
Tony Samson is not appearing.
Tony.
Nakawala na.
Get more
There he is. There he is.
Biro mo, ha?
Unmute.
Biro mo yung mga contribution ninyo, guys. Tony Samson, PLDT,
Rene Valencia.
Teres Burgos, may Lagco, si
Rick Pasqua.
Rick Pasqua with the BGC.
My gosh.
I mean, you know, you really were some pioneers in Philippine business and finance.
Well, Tom Apasible,
Customs
politician,
commissioner.
and also customs commissioner.
Yeah.
Rene Valencia,
He knows a lot of things.
Can
Don't
give
forget
really, can give a
I think
picture
we
of-
should wrap it up already. Nakakaya naman kay Butch, no? Because
we are wrapping
we're
it
going
up.
over
Maybe you
time.
should thank him
We
first.
are.
He's still there.
Okay, Tony, you can have the
Can I be
final
the one
word.
to close this? No?
Please.
We
go
we
ahead.
want to thank Butch. Even those of us who have been in the writing profession learned a lot, no? From his very good talk, and we really want to see the failed email messages, and
Make sure
so this
coming.
session was supposed to give us the courage to write, and also give us some of the tools and the approaches, and I think we succeeded in that regard.
Yeah.
So what we have to do, and I volunteer if anybody wants to be interviewed, because driven, I was interviewing actually Rene Valencia for one, Art Macapagal, no, for those articles in the first book that we had, The Driven. So I can volunteer for those who are very shy.
Terrific.
I will ask them what they had
Fantastic.
for breakfast. So again, let me thank Butch Dalisay. I'm a fan of his.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
I
Butch.
met him once before at PLDT. We had a short conversation then. So thank you, Butch. It was really very mind-opening
Thank you,
for me
Butch.
Thank you,
and
Butch.
for all of us.
Thank you. and
Well
good luck.
done.
So let's have a photo op.
Yeah.
Yes.
Valencia.
Kanina pa ako.
Okay.
Okay.
Wala na.
Bambi, wala si Bambi.
Si Bambi.
I took a photo of all of us. Somewhere there.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I just
Okay.
pick
Good.
it.
Good.
I'll just find it.
Good.
Anyway, I'll send you the recording as well.
Thank you,
Butch.
Butch.
Salamat, Butch. Ha? Okay.
Salamat, Butch.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Marily,
Ingat.
multi-award winner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marily, thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Marielle, for
Everyone,
joining
God
us.
bless you all.
Auntie, everybody.
Santi, thanks.
Emmy.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Marie.
Rene,
Okay.
Rene, Tony,
Okay.
you stay on for a while.
Santi.
Okay.
Okay.
Rene, Emmy, and Tony, and Rene.
Bye,
Well,
all.
everybody stay on. You know, I think one of the things that probably bothering you is the cost. The cost
Goodbye.
of coming out with a book. I
Okay.
think that if you have a good product and they can see at least what product is coming out, you can get the financing for the book,
Okay,
I think.
I agree.
Well, just to give you an idea, right now, we thought of using the funds that was left, no, from this past. We have about 250,000 left, and I think most of it, a lot of it, would really be needed to really edit articles that are coming out, which is very helpful sa mga and right? I received to Lola, I was gonna suggest, buti pa ikaw na lang mag-edit lahat eh.
Gusto mo akong
Galing
mamatay.
ng ginawa mo kay Loloy.
Oo. Kung
Oo,
kaya ko, pero
you made it so
nakakapagod
easy.
eh. I need somebody to do a
Oh, I
first
know.
run
Butch
para
was the
malinis.
same way.
And then I will look at it.
Kaya
Rewrite.
mahirap ka talaga, mahirap. Si Butch nga, di ba,
Hirap talaga
na-burnout?
eh. Ay, naku.
Sabi ni Butch,
Kaya nga, wala na eh. Wala na siya.
Oo nga. Pero
Ayaw na
I
niya.
think somewhere along the line, he will come back again and help.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I
He's
hope
in
so.
there at the back.
Si Butch is always my editor for my books.
Really?
Yeah, for kunyari,
Dalisay, yung sinasabi mo.
Dalisay.
I have books for kunyari, Bangko Sentral. I make him editor.
Yeah. He's very talaga
He's really good. He's really
Magaling
good.
siya.
Oo, magaling si Butch. Pero
That
ayaw
was
niyang sumulat kasi 17 biographies. Can you believe it?
Magaling
Biro mo
talaga.
yun.
that was mesmerizing lecture.
You know, I feel you are only 50 once. And you gotta, sabi ni Santi, you gotta seize the moment. Now, what will happen is, talagang tulungan eh. Buddy system, like Tony is going to do some, I'm not in your class, so I cannot volunteer, sorry. My husband was in the next year, si Jet Hernandez. So, alam mo yung hindi sumali, magsisisi sila eh. That happened to us in their class. They were so nagsisisi, why did we force? We forced. Pero that's why we need to force your other classmates. I wish I could interview Freddie because I know Freddie, but wala na rin akong ano eh. Emmy, this is what I suggest.
What?
Instead of editing everything, gather muna.
I'm gathering na. Walang to gather, so I edit in the
Huwag ka
meantime.
muna magpa-edit.
Yes,
Huwag ka muna
edit.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like si Rene, I read your article, Rene.
Ay, hindi naman kailangan.
Hindi, yung first sentence niya, sinabi niya, I've always wanted to be an officer and a gentleman. If we edit that, sasabihin lang niya doon, an officer and a gentleman, period. That's what I've always wanted to be. And then yung Kirine kasi meron eh. So we can do that for all.
Stylistics na yan. Stylist.
The goal is to get them in. Useless to edit if you only have 8.
Oh, correct.
Di ba?
Bring them in.
Water under the bridge, it's all done.
Well,
Bring them in.
I don't think that is wasted money because it shows what we can do eh. Nakita natin, it's encouraged. Yung kay Loloy lang, after I read it.
Wako!
Yeah.
Ang dugo nang naubos sa akin. Ay,
At least we were able to, I think, help
Love
Lolo.
ka naman niya eh. Love ka
ay
naman niya.
naku.
Si Emmy ang
Idol na, idol. Nakita mo yung buhok dati makapal?
Yeah. Pero tama rin si Marily, I think
Bigo.
ngayon. Now that you know
Ay,
more,
nako.
para huwag ka na nga masyadong kawawa ka naman, Emmy, talaga.
Hindi ako kawawa. Ako pa?
Sarcastic
Nako.
Let's get the articles in. What is the objective first? Tama si Marily.
I
Then,
saw, the vignettes
Okay lang yun. I enjoy it naman eh.
Yung mga vignettes.
Sige.
Even those who have
Thank you.
submitted already, maybe you return their essays to them and they will embellish them.
Ay, naku.
Wag na, wag na.
Flesh them
Naku,
out.
Mariel. Lalong maubos yung buhok ko. Ay, naku. Meron
Yung munang hindi
That's-
nag-submit.
No, that's
Bring them in
different from
first. Bring them in.
Bring them in.
Yeah,
Well,
bring
yeah,
them
that's what
in.
I'm trying to do. Kaya I was hoping they would attend this workshop. Wala naman nag-attend. Ay,
Hello,
naku.
Tom.
So
Yes.
Tony, you can help
Or
Freddy
Tom.
siguro, no?
Yeah, yeah.
Freddy has
If
a
he
great
needs help,
story to
if he
tell.
needs help.
Oh, I mean, if he,
Yeah. Only
Hi,
those who need help.
Tom. I'm just curious, Tom. How much did we spend on the editing?
Wala, maliit lang.
Maliit lang.
wala,
You only have
yung
spent only
startup cost, not much. Eh. Kasi
5,000
the
if
big
it's a
buck is in
full
the
edit,
publication
3,000
cost.
pagka medyo hindi masyadong hirap. Pero ang hindi mababayaran dyan, yung tulong ng Marily at ni Emmy.
Oo nga, oo nga.
Hindi. Mahal ko kayo kasi. Love ko
Can
kayo.
afford Marily in the first place if she really charges her fee.
Puro
I know her
kliyente ko kayo.
also. She charges quite high for professional work talaga.
It'll be a big help if some of us here will bring in already their articles. I think we still need your
Yun na
articles.
nga eh.
Diba? Kasi yung 8, parang nahinto na sa 8 eh. 8
Siguro
plus
muna
2
siguro
vignettes.
natin i-edit yung
Kailangan
Mariel.
at least the draft. Sabi lang natin, calls it the first draft.
No, parang
Or rough draft.
You just have the first draft.
Submit a draft.
Yeah, that's why you have to return them later so they can flesh them out later.
Uy,
Si Tom, wala pa. Si Tom.
Si Tom, wala pa. Si
Oh,
Rick
si
pa.
Tito.
Dito, maraming sasabihin, maraming istorya.
Uy,
Magsimula
si
ka
Tom,
na.
Tom, you can break up your stories. You don't. It
Then,
doesn't have to be in one story. You can have a story about customs. You can have a story about government. You can have a story about.
Tamang-tama rin eh. For example, I use myself as an example. Before I was very reluctant. Now, I don't think I will stop at this one because now, I don't have any yet. Eh.
Yeah, terrific.
So I don't think I may not be able to reach any of my apos if my children have children. So, ito gagawin yung legacy ko sa kanila para magkaroon sila.
Correct.
Yung lolo mo naman pala eh. Diba? May nagawa.
So much to tell.
Yeah, so much talaga. But you can
Si
always...
Chito, ang dami. Saksakan ng daming stories para kay Chito, di ba, Mariel?
Oh, Chito. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, but I wish he could tell his story, I don't know his
No,
story.
you tell it better naman.
Huh?
You will tell it
The eyes of a
better.
loving housewife.
Oo.
Well, I'm looking at it from the outside, pero maganda syempre kung siyang nagkwento. Well, anyway,
wala na siya.
That's beside the point.
Tsaka,
But you guys, you're around and you know what your stories are. For example, Rene, when he was in SSS, that's an era in itself. Because that was a particular president that you worked under. It's very interesting to learn what it was like.
Correct.
Running the SSS. Marami kayong kwento at
Marami kayong kwento, mga rockstar kayo eh.
And significant for Philippine society and Philippine economy.
Tsaka at least ngayon, buhay na yung grupo. Imagine how many times have we tried to come up with this group before? And now we realize we're only a few left. So we really have to do something. Otherwise, there'll be nothing.
Naubos na.
Naubos talaga. Baka last man standing ang maging title natin.
Last women standing.
Okay.
So we are inspired. We are inspired by Santi, by Butch, Marily. Thank you and Mariel. Thank you for the inspiration.
Oo. Thank you so much.
So we have to deliver. We have to deliver.
And then, na-inspire ako kay Santi kasi believe siya sa class niyo.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Santi.
Kasi Marily, if you really think about it.
In the words of Imelda Marcos, basta.
I'm still
Basta meron
recording
siya
this.
hiningi and then nag-hesitate yung, let's say she asked for donation and may mga hesitancy, ang sagot niya, basta.
Guys, I'm still recording this, huh?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Oh, I don't mind. I have a lot of stories about her.
By the way,
Santi, tama ka. When we started, it was the flames of Marcelo was starting. When we graduated, can you imagine that? All of us think this was going to be life-changing. And right after we graduate, it was martial law. My God, So sayang naman yung ating pinag-aralan. Paano tayo babayaran yung mga tuition, lost income when you go back to the company, mga ganon. So, and then ngayon, pandemic, mag-i-election na naman next year. This is again,
Ay, nako.
These are very significant events, lalo na this year.
Swerte tayo.
50th anniversary.
Magandang title yun, from martial law to pandemic.
Oo nga.
Tama.
Half a century.
Book ends.
From 71 to
50 years.
Oo nga, no?
71 to 2021.
Mariel was about to say something, Mariel.
Yeah, I was thinking that another challenge for the bookmakers is writing the short biographies of each class member. Kasi, syempre, at the back of the book, you'll have a little write-up of everyone who contributed an essay. So
Major undertaking.
No, they write it.
that's a major undertaking, but you can also get that from the people themselves.
Yeah,
From
they
the
should.
person themselves.
Oo.
So you submit a short write-up about your career and so.
We'll tell them how
But
many
then
words.
somebody, of course, has to edit them.
We will say how many words, how many lines.
Liners lang siguro.
How many words, how many lines. All
One
of that.
paragraph. One paragraph.
All of that to be harmonized.
Yeah, 1 or 2 paragraphs.
One or two.
But you know what you have
Yes.
accomplished so far? You know, Santi, what you have
Oo,
accomplished?
madami
You
na.
have group together. This, coming together is already one great step.
Yes, correct. Marily.
Very,
Tama.
very, very
Yeah.
important. So good luck, guys. You are the
Thank you so
rock stars.
much.
AIF.
Salamat.
Santi, thank you,
Deliver.
Thank you,
Marily,
everybody.
Salamat.
Mariel,
Onwards,
and
onwards.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Tony.
Good night.
Any
Bye.
siguro, another
I'll-
follow-up
I'll
meeting.
start on Chito's
Another
story.
follow-up meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the
Perfect.
meantime,
I'll,
just
uh,
get everybody to write.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Sige.
everybody. God
Bye.
bless you all.
Okay.